Hello. In this video, I read out the Japanese folktales in English. I would be happy if you could press the channel subscription and thumbs up now. Let's begin. Once upon a time, there was a rich merchant. He was so rich that he built the entire main street of his town with silver coins, and even filled the side streets with them, and still had money left over. However, this merchant didn't do that. He thought of other ways to spend his money, and devised a way to get $1 back for every shilling he gave out. He was such a clever merchant, but he eventually died. So his son got all the money he had left. And so they lived happily. Every night, he went to the museum, he made kites for his son with rice cakes, and played with the seawater by throwing gold coins instead of pebbles. Well, if you keep doing this, no matter how much money you have, it will just run away. In the end, the son was left with only 4 shillings. All he had was a pair of boots and an old nightgown. His friends were reluctant to walk with him, and they stopped coming by. But one of them, a dear friend, gave him an old bag. On the top of the bag was written, "Put something in this." This was a very kind thing to do. But unfortunately, there was nothing to put in it, so the son put himself inside the bag. But it turned out to be a very silly bag. With the lock pressed, the bag would soar into the sky. Whoosh, and the bag immediately began to fly. Fluttering gently, the bag, with his son inside, floated through the hole in the chimney, and through the clouds, flying ever further away. But every time the bottom of the bag creaked, the son got nervous. If it broke apart along the way, and the leaves fell headfirst from the sky, it would be far from wonderful. How scary! And so, in this way, the son made it all the way to Turkey. He then hid the bag among the fallen leaves in the forest, and went off to town to look for animals. He was pretty much still in that state. That's because, like this man, all the Turks were wearing their howery nightgowns and sandals. As the son was walking around, he came across an old woman bringing a child. "Hey, Turkish old woman," the son asked. "What kind of castle is that big castle just outside this town? It has windows that are quite high up." "That is the king's princess's house," the old woman replied. As soon as the princess was born, a bad horoscope came out that she would have a very unlucky husband, so to prevent her from getting a bad husband, no one can be near her except when the king and queen are with her. "No, thank you." The son said this, and went back into the forest. Then he quickly got into his bag, flew onto the roof of the castle, and slipped in through the window into the princess's room. The princess was resting on the sofa. She looked so beautiful that the son could not help but kiss her. The princess woke up, looking very surprised. But the son told the princess not to be afraid, that he was a Turkish god and had come all the way there, walking through the sky. The princess smiled happily. The two of them sat side by side and talked about all sorts of things. First, the son told her about the princess's eyes. He said they were 2 lakes filled with the purest black water, and that beautiful thoughts swam in them like mermaids in the sea. Then he talked about the princess's forehead, which he said was a snow-capped mountain with a most beautiful hall and pictures. Then he told her about a stork that brought cute babies. Yes, all of these stories were very interesting. So the son asked the princess to be his bride, and she immediately answered, "Yes. But I will come on Saturday," she said. "That evening the king and queen will come to have tea. If I told them I was going to marry a Turkish god, they would both be very upset. But you, my dear, would do your best to tell them an interesting story." Both of my parents love to tell stories. My mother likes noble stories that teach morals, and my father Likes funny stories that make people laugh. Yes, I will bring. No other wedding present than a story, said the son. And they parted ways. But just before they parted ways, the princess gave her sword to her son. It was decorated with gold coins, and the son found it very precious. So the son flew off again and bought a new pair of sandals. Then he sat down in the forest and thought up a story. He had to have it ready by Saturday, but that didn't go so well. Somehow, when the story was finally finished, it was already Saturday. The king, queen, and all the officials were having tea at the princess's house. The son was received very courteously. I hear you're going to tell me a story, the queen said. I would like to hear a meaningful and instructive story. Yes. But I think it would be good to have some humor in it, said the king. I understand, replied the son, and he began his story. Now, please listen carefully. Once upon a time, there was a packet of matches. The packet was very proud of its origins. When the packet was traced, it was found to have originally been a large red fir tree, which had been broken into small match pieces. Anyway, it was an old tree in the forest. Now the packet was sitting between the firebox and the old iron pot. So, like this, it began to tell the story of its youth. Match said, yes, when we were still on the green branches, well, actually, we were on the green branches. Every morning and evening, I drank diamond tea. That is, dew. Now, when the day was fine, I would sit peacefully in the sunshine, and the little birds would come and tell me stories. And it was obvious that we were very rich, for the other broad-leaved trees wore green kimonos only in the summer, but our kind continued to wear green kimonos all through the winter. But one day, a woodcutter came and caused a great commotion in the forest, and the family was scattered. But the head of the family was appointed the mainstay of the first ship, a fine ship that can sail around the world at any time. The other branches are settled in their own kitchens. We took on the task of lighting the lamps for the poor people. That's why we, of good standing, came to this kitchen. The song I'm singing is a little off, said the iron pot next to the match. Since I first came into this world, I don't know how many times I've boiled and simmered in my stomach, and then scrubbed with a scrubbing brush. I've always tried to make things economical and long-lasting, so I've become the oldest of these people. My greatest joy is after a meal, settling into my own place, polished clean, and sharing intimate conversations with my friends. My bucket is the only one that gets dragged to the back. Sometimes, but the others always live at home. Even among us, the newspaper reporters are the market basket. But that man talks about the government and the people in a very unpleasant way. The other day, an old man was so scared that he fell and was broken into pieces. He is a liberal, indeed. Come on, you talk too much, said the firebox, and he struck the firestone, and sparks flew. How about it? Let's have a fun night together. Well, let's have a game of who was born the most high-ranking among us, said Match. No, I don't want to say anything about myself, the stone soup pot replied. Well, why don't we just have a fun evening together? I'll start right away. I'll tell you a story I actually encountered, something everyone has experienced. Then everyone can easily imagine the situation, and I think it will be interesting. Now, in the East Sea, in the beech forests of Denmark. That's a great introduction. I'm sure everyone will find this story interesting, the plates cried in unison. Yes, I grew up in a quiet home like that. The utensils were always well polished. The floor was always thoroughly cleaned, and the curtains were changed every 2 weeks. You're quite a good speaker, said the feather duster. It's obvious right away that the speaker is a woman, and there's something elegant and pretty about her. Yes, that's what it feels like. The bucket went and jumped up a little in joy, splashing water on the floor. The soup pot continued to talk, and it was quite entertaining. Until the end. The plate friends were all happy and chattering away. The broom found a green watercress in the sand and put it on the soup bowl. He tied it around her like a rope. He knew that others would see it and be jealous, but if I give her flowers today, she'll give them to me tomorrow, thought the broom. Now, I'll dance, said the poker, and started dancing. It was amazing, the poker danced so well on one foot. The old chair in the corner saw this and laughed out loud. How about, I want a wreath too, the poker asked, and he got it. Thank you, they're all worthless, thought the match to himself. Now it was the tea maker's turn to sing. But she refused, saying she had a cold. Then, she said, she would be able to sing when the tea began to boil in her stomach. But she was pretending, and in reality she wanted to stand on the tea table and sing in front of the distinguished guests. There was a sieve pen on the window sill. It was always used by the maids. There was nothing particularly special about this pen, but it was simply immersed in the bottom of the ink, and she took great pride in it. If the tea maker says she won't sing, let her do so. In the birdcage in front, there is a shy bird, and she sings. Well, I don't think she needs any education, but let's not ask her about it tonight. Then the water maker said, why? I don't think so at all. This was the best singer in the kitchen, and the brother who was the tea maker. It's ridiculous to listen to the song of a foreign bird. Can you call that patriotic? I'll let Basket, who's good at the market, tell me. Now, Basket said angrily, I'm so displeased. You can't imagine how displeased I feel in my heart. Is this, after all, a good way to spend the evening? Wouldn't it be much more sensible to keep the house clean and tidy? You should all go back to your own places, and then I'll do it again. It'll be a little different. All right, let's all have fun, said the others. At that moment, the door suddenly opened, and the maid came in. Everyone quickly became quiet, and stopped making noise. However, there was not a single person in the pot who did not know about this interesting game, and everyone thought how great they could be, and how amazing they were. So, they all thought to each other, of course, if I were up to it would make for a very interesting evening. The maid struck a match, and lit a fire. Oh, I heard a whoosh, and the fire instantly lit up nicely. Well, look, everyone. I'm the best after all. How bright it shines. How bright it is. The match thought, and before it knew it, it had burned out. That was an interesting story, the queen said. I thought my soul was being carried to the match in the kitchen. I'll give you my daughter. Yes, that's a good idea, the king said. Then you can have my daughter on Monday. So now, both of you were like you own my son, and I gave him to you. The wedding was now decided. The night before, festival illuminations had been put on throughout the town. Biscuits and cakes were generously distributed among the people, and the town's boys gathered in the streets, shouting cheers and whistling with their fingers to their lips. It was a wonderful atmosphere, so the merchant's son thought, I'll show my appreciation by doing something for them, so he bought all sorts of fireworks, including meteor fireworks and Chinese tallow fireworks, and put them in his bag and flew off into the sky. Bang, bam, my goodness, what beautiful fireworks they made. What a lively sound they made. Each time, the Turks would jump up, kicking their sandals up to their ears. No one had ever seen such a magnificent aerial performance before. So it was decided that the princess would marry a Turkish god. The son went back down into the forest in his bag, and thought to himself, I'll go into town now and find out what everyone is saying about me. It was no wonder that the sun had such an idea. So, what were they talking about? They were talking about completely different things and had different views. But everyone agreed that it was quite an impressive thing. I worshipped a Turkish god, one of them said. His eyes shone like the stars, and his beard was as white as the foam of the sea. He was flying in a cloak of fire, said the other. A cute little angel was peeking out from between the folds. Everything the sun heard was wonderful. The next day was finally the day of the wedding. So the sun decided to go back into the forest and rest in his bag. But what happened? The bag was completely burned. The fireworks that were left in the bag had caught fire, and reduced the bag to ashes. The sun could no longer fly. He could no longer go to his bride. The bride stood on the roof all day waiting. He's probably still waiting. But my son continued to tell stories as he traveled around the world, but he could no longer make up stories as interesting as the match story. That's that.